Hey everyone, just a quick short afternoon stream for you. I'm going to be reading more of Stranger Things spin-off novel, one way or the other. So I'm up to chapter 11. So I'm going to be doing the next two chapters, 11 and 12, just quick chapters. And I'll be back with more of this soon. Just to remind you guys, the next live stream will be Friday. That will be the normal Friday night watch. This week I'm watching an 80s film called Without Warning, and you will be redirected to that live stream after this one, by the way. So nice and easy. That's Friday night. The movie is free on YouTube. So I've got my Scoops Ahoy mug here, and I'm going to go on to chapter 11. See, it's just coming up to past. If the lawn outside Joey Taft's house had ever been green and alive, that had changed long before Joey's death 5 days ago. Brown grass stretched from the curb all the way up to the front door, making some impressive headway on the cracked and broken concrete walkway that split the lawn into two. The biggest clue behind Hello, I'm not sure who that is. Hey, Edits, how are you? Welcome to the stream. Crazy work. You're crazy at work. Okay, that sounds cool. Well, I hope you enjoy the stream. Thank you. The biggest clue behind the yard's demise, don't forget to sub if you're new to the channel. Demise was the jagged hole torn deep into the dirt about 5 feet from the street. While the rift was glowing and pulsating beneath iron plates, oh, who could forget the iron plates? A few blocks away, this crafter was totally mundane, the space where a tree had once stood before the earthquake had dislodged it and sent it toppling. Now the only shade in the Taft's front yard was cast by the health and home billboard that had been erected out front. Savings towns, changing lives. And under the blaze of the Indiana sun, the lawn had fried to a crisp. It crunched under Nancy and Robin's shoes as they approached the house. We gotta get Joey's grandmother a land scraper, Robin mumbled to herself. Nancy winced in agreement and rang the doorbell. The loud chime echoed somewhere in the depths of the house. Nancy waited until the last tones had died away, but there was no movement inside, no sign that anyone was coming to the door. If she's that sick, Rob invented, then maybe she can't hear us. She could be asleep. Who could sleep through that doorbell? Me, after finals? Nancy hit the doorbell again, and again. There was no answer. But as she turned toward Robin, excuse me? There was someone standing on the front step of the house next door, a woman who looked to be in her late 60s. She waved at Nancy and Robin and made a beeline towards them, crunching across the dried grass. Nancy shot Robin a mystified glance and received only a shrug in return. Hi? The woman drew to a busting stop in front of the two girls. Are you looking for Mrs. Taft? That's right, Nancy said. I'm Nancy. This is Robin. We were friends of Joey's from school. We wanted to come by and pass along our condolences. Such a tragedy. What happened to that boy? The woman said, shaking her head, sorry. He always was a help around the neighborhood. You know, he bought me my paper every morning. Do you know where she might have gone? Robin asked. Joey's grandmother, I mean, Mrs. Taff, where she went. We know she's been sick, Nancy said. Between that and what happened to Joey, we just want to make sure she's okay. Well, ain't you sweet, the woman said. Of course. Wilhelmina, that's Mrs. Taff. She's been checked into Hawkins Memorial. I'm afraid that her condition had taken a turn for the worse even before Joey died. If you're looking for her, you should find her there. She patted Nancy's arm. And when you see her, you tell her Cynthia's looking after her place, all right. Thank you, Miss Cynthia, Nancy said with her sugarist smile. We'll definitely let her know that it's all in good hands. But Nancy's sweet smile vanished as soon as she and Robin started making their way back to Nancy's car. Hawkins Memorial, Nancy murmured. Shit. What's the problem? Robin asked. We know where she is. We can go talk to her. The problem, Nancy said, is that SMH is hard to get into, even when the town isn't under quarantine. Sneaking in to talk to Mrs. Taff now, it's going to be practically impossible. Who said we have to sneak? Robin asked. Nancy raised her eyebrow. They're not just going to let us wander the halls. Robin hummed, her gaze distant. There was a plan formulating somewhere between her eyes. Maybe, she said. Robin? I have a thought, okay, Robin said. It's just a thought, like a baby thought, a thoughtlет. Is this thoughtlет going to get us into the hospital? It might, Robin said, but it's going to take a second. I just need to work my magic. Nancy's second eyebrow joined into her first near her hairline. Magic? Forget God, forget I said that. Robin was bright red, tugging the handle of the car door. Why is this still locked? Don't you have things to do? Places to be? She was acting weird, and that twinged at every one of Nancy's journalistic and just plain noisy senses. Nancy did her best to push them aside and climb into the car without praying. It wasn't polite to snoop on friends, and besides, Robin was right. Nancy did have somewhere to be, and she was already running late. Okay, so I'm getting season 4 vibes there with some of those plottings. Robin's a cheeky one. So I'm going to go straight on to chapter 12. Did you grab a hard hat? Georgia Miller had to shout to be heard over the reckless thunder of demolition, and even then Nancy could barely hear her. She waved the neon green hard hat that she'd been presented with upon her arrival at the work site, and almost lost her balance as rubble shifted under her feet. Careful, Georgia said, lunging forward to steady Nancy before she could join in the shattered slabs of concrete that surrounded them. They were standing in front of a 2-story office complex a few blocks east of downtown Hawkins. What had once been a quiet little front plaza with a bubbling water feature was now a treacherous maze of debris, destroyed first by the earthquake and then again by health and home as they cleared the way to repair the building itself. Sorry, Nancy said once she was upright. I didn't plan on manual labor when I was picking out my outfit this morning. The pumps were Don't you dare say a word against those heels, Georgia said. They're stellar. Let's just make sure you're showing them off without breaking an ankle, okay? The puff piece on health and home and Georgia Miller had not been at the top of Nancy's lists of priorities. To tell the truth, Nancy had completely forgotten that it had even been assigned to her until her mother had brought Georgia up during their Emerson dorm discussion. The reminder had finally coerced her into calling the Health and Homes offices in Hawkins. As makeshift as the offices were, there were no receptionists, but whoever had answered the phone quickly, whoever had answered the phone certainly hadn't been the happiest to hear that a reporter was interested in coming by. It had only been when she'd mentioned George's friendship with Nancy's mother that she'd made any headway. And now she was edging along through the evidence of Health and Home's reconstructive efforts. The deafening thunder of the jackhammers was almost bearable as Nancy entered the front lobby. Nancy no longer found herself fighting an urge to clap her hands over her ears. Some of that relief must have shown on her face because Georgia gave her a sympathetic wince. The whole building was built on a slab form foundation, she said, and that's great for a lot of things. It's cheap, durable, you'll never get termites. But God forbid your plumbing springs a leak or completely gives out due, say, to an earthquake. We have to rip out the entire basement just to get the toilets flushing again. Nancy fumbled for her notebook and scribbled out the words flushing toilets before reconsidering. You're not tearing that place down, she asked. We tried to keep the demolition to a minimum at H&H, Georgia said. In contrast to Nancy's heels, Georgia was wearing steel-toe work boots that handled the construction debris of the dusty lobby with ease. A minimum? Nancy threw a disbelieving glance behind her. Georgia laughed. I know it might not look like it, but yes, a minimum. Hey, asked Fred, how are you? Welcome to the stream. Here, she held open the door to one of the office suits. You are watching, okay, before beckoning Nancy through. It wasn't until Nancy was inside that she figured out where she was. A quick glance at the placard on the open door confirmed it. This was the office of Dr. Larson, the practitioner who had taken care of Nancy and Mike growing up and who still saw Holly. He was a gentleman who was quick to swap out a tongue depressor with a lollipop when the exam was over and who never made you feel bad about crying during fascinations. He'd also He'd also set aside one of the walls in the waiting room for a mural of all the kids he treated, a mural, sorry, of all the kids he treated over his decades of practicing medicine. Handprints covered almost every inch of the usable space, smears of bright paint overlapping one another. Nancy could still see the purple print she'd left behind in upper left corner. Mike was a little further down. Holly hadn't left hers yet, but Nancy knew she was excited for the chance. She didn't realize how long she'd been staring at the mural until Georgia spoke up at her shoulder. We could have torn this building down, she said, rebuilt it from ground up. It honestly have been easier, cheaper, and Tyler's crew wouldn't be threatening to destroy their jackhammers right now. Nancy turned to look at her. I'm sure you've seen our billboards around town, right? One or two of them, Nancy said wearily. Saving towns, changing lives, Georgia recited, followed by an apologetic smile. I know it's trite. Would you believe me if I told you then it tested extremely well? I'll believe almost anything. What a quality in a journalist, Georgia said with a wink. She crouched down, pointing at a yellow handprint near the bottom of the mural. It had been overlapped by fingers of another eager kid, but not enough to block it out completely. Oh, hey, Durok. So this book, it's a spin-off novel, but it's set between seasons 4 and 5. So it's sort of bridging the gap a little. So it's not really any season. It's just that it's set between 4 and 5. So technically it's heading into season 5, I guess. That was me 100 years ago. Everything that health and health goes, every community was stepped into. They're all their murals. They're Dr. Larson's. They're special details that are worth preserving. Saving towns is about saving towns, not just bulldozing them and throwing something else up in their place. Does that make sense? Yeah, it does. Nancy was already writing, pencil flying, trying to scribble George's words down as fast as she could. You said during commencement that you never wanted to come back to Hawkins. Georgia let out an explosive little laugh. You don't pull any punches, do you? It's not a punch. Could have fooled me. Georgia sat back on her heels and looked up at Nancy. Is there a question in there? How does it feel? Nancy asked. Now that you are back. Something shuttered over Georgia's expression. The stare that she pinned Nancy with was inscrutable. Her eyes hardened to stone. Georgia stopped. Maybe she had surprised herself by how hollow her voice had sounded. It had certainly surprised Nancy. It feels. Hey, boss. There was a man standing in the open doorway, raining cement dust onto the already filthy floor. He was tall, so tall that his hard hat almost scraped the top of the door frame, and skinny with an impressively full light brown moustache. Tyler, hey, Georgia stood with a groan, wincing as her spine gave a few audible pops. This is Nancy Wheeler. She's doing a piece on H&H for the Hawkins Post. Welcome, welcome, Tyler said, face splitting in a friendly grin. He tugged a heavy-duty work glove off his hand before reaching to shake Nancy's. Georgia waved along their introduction. Nancy, Tyler Goose, my second in command. Nothing gets done at these job sites without him. They've tried, Tyler said. They've failed. You sound like a pretty important man, Nancy said. Tyler banished her compliment with a twitch of the shoulders. I just know how to keep things moving. Speaking of which, Georgia last looks at the basement. Come in, Georgia said. How about you, Nancy? Do you want to see the belly of the beast? Nancy screwed her hard hat further down over her hair. As long as my ankles can handle it. Her ankles were increasingly uncertain about the situation as Nancy followed Georgia and Tyler down the stairs, and Nancy privately vowed to circle those pumps out of wardrobe rotation. She could know by now that she'd always be prepared to run at a moment's notice. Tyler was kind enough to offer her an arm on the last few steps, where the earthquake had dislodged the railing from its moorings, and Nancy alighted onto the wreckage of the basement floor without disaster. The distraction upstairs might have been kept to a minimum, whatever that meant to Georgia, but down here the proverbial wrecking ball had swung without restraint. Every inch of the place had been gutted, the dry rail had been yanked out, channels had been ripped into the unfinished concrete floor, and piles of warped ancient piping rested against the walls. Nancy would have to trust, and Tyler and Georgia were sure that demolition had compromised the structural integrity of the building. It would be irritating to die in a construction accident after she'd survived so many more interesting near death experiences. This is the foundation, Nancy asked, once she'd figured out her footing and released Tyler's arm. Yes, ma'am, Tyler said. He trudged over to the edge of one of the trenches, and Nancy followed suit, peering inside when he pointed into the trench's depths. It wasn't difficult to see. High-powered work lamps blasted the space with flat white light, washing over every nook and cranny. It was easy to pick out the grooves where heavy machinery had carved away at the concrete, slicing through it to the exposed earth beneath. Now it might seem redundant, Tyler said, squatting down beside the trench, but the foundation is really the foundation, you know. You're going to have to get a little more eloquent than that if you want her to follow you, Ty, Georgia laughed, perching on the creaking stairs. Nancy tapped her notepad with the end of her pencil. Sorry. No, I actually think I get what you mean. She paced the length of the trench up until the point where it branched off, one channel landing left and the other continuing on straight. You're saying the foundation is where you start, right? Tyler snapped his fingers at her. Right, exactly. He made a face at Georgia. Who says I'm not eloquent? Huh? Georgia grinned, rolling her eyes. There's a first for everything. The foundation's the first thing we take a look at when we take on a new project, Tyler said. Hopping over the trench to face Nancy from the other side, you gotta see what kind of shape it's in. If it's fucked, Tyler Georgia warned, then the whole building is fucked, Nancy said, filling in the rest of the sentence. It's not the 50s anymore, Miller, Tyler shot over at Georgia. The kids these days know words that'll make your ears bleed. Don't teach him any, Georgia told Nancy. You're warping. This is where your as little demolition as possible policy starts, Nancy asked. Tyler's sweeping arm took in the entire room. Right here in the basement, he said. We open her up, figure out what needs fixing, figure out what's worth fixing, and then we get to work from there. You do this in every building, Nancy asked. Tear open the floor. It's not always this extreme, Georgia said. Sometimes Tyler or one of his crew can just go scurrying around in the crawl space under a house and check it out that way. But spots like this, slab foundation, Nancy said. George's smile made Nancy feel like she had won something. She listens. She writes things down, boss, Tyler said, but you're right, on the money, kid. So if this foundation isn't a lost cause, Nancy said, doubtfully surveying the wreckage that had been made of the basement, then what happens next? You really want to get him started? Georgia asked. It's why I'm here, Nancy said. What happens next? How do you start saving towns and changing lives? Tyler's moustache gave a gleeful twitch. How much do you know about a slab jacking or helical piers? Not much at all, was the answer, and Nancy soon found herself adrift in a sea of technical terms. They flowed out of Tyler without pause. It didn't take long until Nancy's writing hand was cramping, and she had to settle for scribbling down only every third or fourth word Tyler said. Okay, Georgia finally said, cutting in just as Tyler's monologue was rounding the corner from sump pumps and towards French drains. I think you've talked Nancy's ear off enough for one day, right, Ty? Tyler winced. Sorry, I get a little carried away. You know your stuff, Nancy said, fixing her fingers to get a little feeling back into them. You must have been working in construction for a long time. Tyler shrugged. Hopping down the trench, 20 years, give or take. He looked like he was in his late 30s, which would mean he had a pretty early start. Family business? Nancy asked. No, he said. My family's not the work with your hands type, you know. I wanted to do something different, go another direction. I think Nancy knows a little bit about that, Georgia said. I should probably head out, Nancy said, flipping her notebook shut. Thanks for giving me so much of your time. It was my pleasure, Georgia said. Tyler's too. He never gets to have anyone just listen to him go on like that. See you around, kid, Tyler called. The only sign of him was a single gloved hand waving above the tip of the trench. He can get out of there, right? Nancy whispered to Georgia as they made their way back up the stairs. If I don't see him by the end of the day, I'll throw down a rope, Georgia said with a quiet snicker. She walked with Nancy back through the building's lobby and out into the sidewalk. You can get you get home safe, okay? Sure. Hey, Georgia, Nancy shifted a weight between her feet, twisting her purse strap in one hand. I know you said you never wanted to come back to Hawkins, and I know there ain't really the best circumstances, but what you guys are doing here, the image of handprints on the office wall flashed before her eyes. She smiled. It's really great. Something flickered in Georgia's eyes, just for a split second. Sadness? Doubt? It was gone too quickly for Nancy to decipher, wiped away by another one of those whining grins. Winning grins, sorry. Thanks, Georgia said. It always means a lot to hear that. And hey, she stopped Nancy as she turned to go. Boston, give me a call. I'll send you the article when it's done, Nancy said. She waved back over her shoulder as she made her way down the sidewalk, digging her keys out of her bag and trying to remember where she'd left the car. She'd only gone a few steps when something pricked the back of her neck, ominous and familiar. Awareness poured over her skin. Nancy's head shot, scanning the street up ahead of her, the street behind her, and sure enough, there was a man watching her. He was standing still as a statue under a tree a little ways down the road. Nancy might have missed him completely, except for the fact that in this sea of pickup trucks and coveralls, he was wearing a black suit and a tie. For a moment, Nancy almost allowed herself to ignore him, to think she was imagining things, to believe that he was just an office worker on a walk before heading back to his cubicle. But this was Hawkins, and if the past 3 years had taught Nancy anything, it was to embrace her paranoia. If she thought that a man in a black suit was watching her, then a man in a black suit was watching her. Okay then, if he wants to watch me, then he can damn well tell me why. Hoisting her purse higher onto her shoulder, Nancy strode forward, picking up speed as she went down the broken sidewalk, past a car, heading straight for him. If Nancy had been in his shoes, if he'd been spotted by the person she'd been stalking out, she would have panicked. No matter how many times she faced down extra planal monsters or AMOR government agents, she'd never been able to conquer the stomach sinking feeling of shit, they see me. This guy, though, he didn't flinch at Nancy's approach. His neutral expression doesn't shift a millimeter. He calmly kept his gaze leveled at her, watching the whole time as he unlatched the door of his sedan and slid into the driver's seat. Hey, Nancy called, picking up the pace. And yeah, okay, the pumps were definitely getting moved out of rotation, because if hiking through the construction site had been difficult, then sprinting down this choppy sidewalk was nearly impossible. Hey! Through the windshield, she could see the little smile he gave her. Then he slid a pair of avatars onto his nose, turned the car, signaled, and then wheeled the sedan out onto the road, leaving Nancy to watch his tail lights disappeared out of sight. There you go. Very good. Okay. Intriguing stuff. And that's the end of chapter 12. So I'll be back with another stream soon. I'll be reading the next few chapters from 13 onwards. So yeah, keep supporting the channel, keep watching and reading about Stranger Things. And I'll be back on stream on Friday, sorry. Take care, guys. See you soon. Thanks. Bye.